Parents of Reddit. If when discussing colleges with your kid they said to you, but Steve Jobs was a college dropout, how would you respond? Story 1. Steve Jobs had a business plan, a team, and investors before he dropped out. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out from Harvard with a working product and investors. If my kid has a business plan and investors already, sure, go ahead and drop out. Story 2. I would say, Steve Jobs had an alternative plan already in motion when he dropped out. Show me what you got and we'll discuss it. You might just convince me. Story 3. Teach your kids that education is important. It doesn't matter whether it's college or not. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates both dropped out, but they didn't stop learning. That's what you need to emphasize. They dropped out because they were busy building the foundation of corporate empires, chasing their ideas and creating businesses. College isn't necessary for most people, especially not for those highly motivated entrepreneurs. Story 4. I would ask what their career aspirations are and what their actionable steps are to achieve that goal. College isn't for everyone, but they need to have a plan for what they're doing otherwise. Are they an artist? Do they want to go into the trades? Are there relevant certifications outside of a college degree they want to work on? They need to at least be working. Forcing teens to go to college and commit to all of that debt without a plan is so damaging. So I don't understand dragging them off to college just because. Story 5. My kids are too young to make these arguments, but hypothetically, my answer would be around probabilities. You can be successful without a college degree, and you can be a failure with one. And I am not going into definitions of success and failure here, but the probability of success goes up with a degree, etc. If it is the right choice for my kids, I'd also support them in not going to college. Story 6. Steve Jobs dropped out of college and continued to take classes there. He just didn't like the requirements for which classes he had to take. Reed College tolerated this. Whether they would have done that for anyone else who did that back then, or who tried doing something like that today. Though I'm sure at many larger colleges, you could drop into large lecture hall classes when no one takes attendance and no one would even notice. Most college dropouts are not wired like that. Story 7. Not my kids, but I've said to students and a sibling. I've said, referencing Mark Zuckerberg, he dropped out of Harvard. Not just college. Jobs, Zuckerberg, Gates, etc. didn't drop out because it was too hard, or so they could slack. They dropped out to form, now, billion-dollar companies. Story 8. So are gas station attendants, landscapers, infantrymen in the army. The only reason the big billionaires who talk a lot about dropping out of college did so was because they personally didn't need what it was teaching them. Can you honestly say that for whatever your plan in life is, you understand your desired field enough to just disregard 6 months, 6 years worth of courses, and still be successful? Story 9. So was Bill Gates. So bring me your business plan and let's see if you have legitimate ideas for following a harder, rarer path, or just want to avoid more education. Are you considering a trade instead? It is good to consider the value of something as expensive money and time-wise as college, especially if you are taking out loans. But don't think the odds favor you duplicating what Gates or Jobs did. They are a few in billions. Story 10. My 13-year-old already asked me about it. I told her, if you really want to go, do it. But remember that college isn't necessarily for everyone. You still have a couple years to sit on the idea. I personally don't care if she does or doesn't go, but if she doesn't go, then she's going to enter the workforce ASAP. She can live at home as long as she likes, but if there's no schooling going on, it's going to be work. My parents didn't raise me to be a freeloader, and I'm not raising her or her brother to be freeloaders either. Story 11. That's a good point about Steve Jobs, but it's important to remember that his path was unique. For most people, college provides valuable skills and opportunities. It's about finding what works best for you and your goals. Education can play a big role in reaching those goals, but it's also important to explore all your options and plan accordingly. Story 12. As someone whose parents forced him to go to college, I wish they hadn't. Wasted a year of my life and their money working toward a degree that got changed because I didn't know what I wanted to do. College isn't for everyone. Story 13. TLDR. I think it's important to emphasize that you should have a plan. Whether someone wants to go into a trade, to uni, to college, start their own business, work, or anything else, they would have a plan with goals. Steve Jobs definitely had a plan. It's also totally okay if your plan doesn't work out. In fact, reassure them that most people's plans don't work out. That's still kind of part of life's plan sometimes. If you do something and find out you don't like doing it at an early age, that's great. Move on to the next thing while you're young. The unfortunate reality is that you become a completely different person throughout your 20s, and you shouldn't feel too obligated to stick to something you decided when you were 18. Story 14. Well, if the kid is serious about becoming a billionaire and starting a revolutionary company, then maybe it's something to think about. But until then, let them at least finish high school first. Story 15. For every 1,000 dropouts, how many Steve Jobs are there? But I wouldn't force them to go if they didn't want to. It would be a waste of money if they don't actually take it seriously. Even working a minimum wage job is better than going into massive debt and flunking and working minimum wage dead-end jobs. Story 16. My kids were never forced to go to college as long as they found a different purpose. My son currently works a decent paying job but is planning to go back to school soon. He's 19. It's his choice. My daughter, 25, ended up at cost school because a regular college wasn't her vibe. She makes good money. College isn't for everyone. I didn't go either, so why would I force it on my own? Now, if one of my kids used Steve Jobs as their reasoning, I'd question their logic and ask them to provide actual reasons they don't want to attend college. But TBF, my kids wouldn't be asked why in the first place. I would just ask, what are you going to do instead? Story 17. I'd say cool. There are other options. I'm not going to force you to waste a ton of money on a degree you don't want. What are you interested in? What are you thinking about doing? Story 18. If you think one piece of anecdotal evidence is enough to make this claim, maybe it's high schools you should be looking at again. No kid of mine is going to beat me in an argument with this week. For every one Steve Jobs, there are dozens of deadbeats who wish they had more career options. I'm not saying college is for everyone. I am saying pointing at Steve Jobs as an example is brain dead. Story 19, I'd respond with, that's true, but Steve Jobs is an exception. For most people, college provides important skills, experiences, and networking opportunities. It's one path among many, and we should explore what's best for you and your goals. Story 20. I can't speak much on Steve Jobs. When growing up, it was Bill Gates that was the college dropout. My answer to that was, well, Bill Gates got into Harvard. You couldn't pass. Insert bullshit class from not Harvard. And I add, Harvard has a policy that you can return anytime. Most colleges don't. You get X months to 1 year and then it's pay dollar and reapply and see. Story 21. Don't go if you don't want. But find a job. Figure yourself out. It's a waste of money to be where you don't want to be. And I wouldn't want you to spend your life doing something you hate because we forced you to go to college before you had a plan. Story 22. It depends entirely on the context. Are they looking into programs that are worth paying for compared to their expected income, like becoming an RN or a CPA? Or do they want to major in communications at a mid-tier private liberal arts school with $60K a year tuition? You have to steer the conversation based on that. The truth is that some degrees are always valuable and some really aren't. I'd go so far as to argue that the degree doesn't usually matter unless you have letters after your name. And even then, it sometimes doesn't. Story 23. If you don't want to go to college right now, that's okay, and I will love and support you no matter what. That being said, what is your plan for the next year? Story 24. Steve Jobs was also a strongly driven individual who essentially won the lottery. For every Steve Jobs, there are 20,000 dropout who end up working at Wendy's. It takes a unique combo of charm, intelligence, drive, and luck to get to where he did, and he still ended up dead because of his own hubris. He was also roundly disliked by everyone who knew him personally. So is that really the person you want to emulate? Story 25. Steve Jobs went to college. He only dropped out because his business was taking off. That applies to most of the college dropouts, and they often drop out of a master's degree having completed a graduate degree. His choice. Get his business to be so successful that he can afford to drop out or stay in college. Story 26. College is not for everyone. I really wish high school would push technology schools and skilled labor more than taking out student loans and going to big-name universities. Don't get me wrong, there are multiple jobs that require a degree, but what 16, 17-year-old knows what they want to do with the rest of their life? I sure as didn't. Blue-collar workers are seriously underestimated and easily pull in over 6 figures a year. If you have a skill and are good at it, statistically you will never go without a job. I think taking a year off between high school and college is healthy. I personally took a year off, busted to get into nursing school, only to drop out because of financial reasons. And as a college dropout, I was still able to become successful and financially stable strictly by hard work and determination. Story 27. And that's why you need to stay in college, if for no other reason to learn that Steve Wozniak was the actual brains of the outfit, and that Jobs was just a self-involved hype man who fell for pseudoscientific nonsense, which led him to reject medical treatment for a curable cancer until the point it was no longer treatable. In short, the man was an idiot. Story 28. I don't care whether you become a carpenter or someone with a PhD, but you've got to do something. If you don't know what you want to do with your life yet, it's okay to get a job while you figure it out, but you can't do nothing. Story 29. They don't have to go to college if they're going to start providing for themselves. But if I offer to pay for college, then I would rather them take that opportunity. Worst case for them, the flunk out, but financially no loss. It would ruin their GPA if they returned later, though. Most kids say they don't want to go to college because of financial reasons, not because I don't feel like it. Story 30. Depends on what they're doing. If they're trying to do a trade or get out early in the workforce, I wouldn't really bat an eye. If they're saying it to justify lazy behavior and being a freeloader, then I'd be inclined to remind them that sitting on there and not doing anything won't the next big thing into existence. Story 31. I mean, my kids are under 10, but I would ask them why they don't want to go to college. If it's because they aren't sure what they want to be, I'd empathize with them and say that struggling with identity is hard, and deciding what you want from your future is harder. I'd align with their thoughts and tell them they're unsure of the steps they want to take in life. I'd then offer them solutions. As in, I hope I'll be acutely aware of what their interests are in life, or at least what their concerns are. I'd point out that there are other options other than college. For example, trade school is a fantastic option, and going the route of a journeyman is a viable path that will offer them stability in the future. Finally, I'd just appeal to their humanity and the people they've become. I'd tell them that my entire life has been centered around ensuring that they have a better life than what I had. I dropped out of college and think about that choice every day. But all roads I've taken led to them, and I don't ever regret that. And in the end, whatever they decide, I'll support them as long as they continue to have conversations with me, and we work together to get them set up for success in the future. So basically, I just talk to them how I was never talked to when growing up. I've made mistakes, but it's worked pretty well for me so far. Story 32. But he went to college. You can't drop out of college if you don't first go there and find out it's not right for you. Steve Jobs was successful because he tried a bunch of different things, and yeah, some of them failed because that's the way things go. So maybe he did drop out of college, but if he didn't go down that avenue in the first place, he wouldn't have been as successful as he was. He'd have been someone who didn't do things in case they don't work out. Now, if college isn't an avenue you want to go down because you've got other endeavors in mind, then let's discuss it. Story 33. Ask them what their alternative plan is. Begin discussing what skill set they have. Does their future actually need a degree? If they are not naturally curious and can't handle setbacks, then it might be a good idea to follow a traditional educational route. One thing that is guaranteed is that there will be lots of failure in their pursuits. If this child is fine with working terrible jobs while focusing on their dream with an unwavering passion, then I don't see a problem. Story 34. Just depends on the kid. College isn't the right path for everyone. Listen to them and find out what they are passionate about and want to do, then build the path around that. Story 35. You're right, and college isn't for everyone. What aspirations do you have that don't require a college degree? What are your plans if you choose not to go to college? There's no reason to put yourself into massive debt if you don't have to. Lots of trades offer apprenticeships where you get paid to learn a valuable, in-demand skill. Let's look at those instead. Story 36. Why parents don't give options for their offspring. Option 1. You go to college and I'll keep supporting you. Option 2. You don't go to college, but you will get a job and start paying rent. There. Let the people who actually will have to go through the process of trying to get a diploma to choose what they want for their future. Story 37. It's just not that big a deal. One of mine wasn't getting a lot out of college, so he left to become an auto mechanic. He'll probably make twice as much money as if he'd stuck around for a degree in communications. And there are like 1,000-degree completion programs out there one can do as a working adult if he changes his mind. Story 38. Folks are pointing out that Jobs may not be the best person to emulate, but I definitely think about folks I know who didn't take the standard path through college. Graduate HS, finish a degree in 4 years, go on to whatever is next. Honestly, if your kid is saying something like that, going directly into college may not be right for them. You can get your degree at any age, so I would ask them what their plan is for right after HS, and keep talking to them about if college will be something they see themselves doing in a year, 2 years, 5 years. Lots of students start college right after HS, go into debt to do so, and flunk out. I'd rather my kid wait until they are ready to be successful than have them go when they aren't ready. Story 39. Discuss pros and cons. Let them make the choice. Make it clear you're not going to save them from the natural consequences of their actions. Listen, really listen, to their reasoning. Treat them like an adult. Then you can say, I listen to you. Please listen to me. Story 40. I didn't go to college, am a single parent of 2 teens, have a good job, own my home, car, and have no debt outside of my mortgage. They just need to have a plan is all. Story 41. I mean, I make more than most Americans with no college, so I'm a bad one to ask. I wouldn't be surprised if my kids skipped college, but I'm not having any. Climate change being that it is going to up in their lifetime and all. Story 42. If you don't want to go to college, pick a trade. You either work or go to school. If you work, you need to find your own apartment. If the kid can't be independent, you have no one to blame but yourself. Story 43. I'd tell them about survivorship bias. And for one, Bill Gates, there are thousands who weren't as fortunate. That said, dream big, and ultimately if they have a passion that doesn't involve college, let them follow it. If not, college can be a good place to figure that out. Story 44. I'd show them a bell curve. I would explain that Steve Jobs is way out on the right end because of being exceptionally smart and exceptionally lucky. Then, way at the other end on the left are people who are exceptionally unsmart and exceptionally unlucky. I would then explain that most of the people who are in the middle are reasonably smart and reasonably lucky, and they are in college. I would then ask my child where they think fit on that curve. Story 45. One of our kids tried this and our response was vintage Gen X. You're not a genius and you need a vocation. Trade school, military, or college. You won't live here without pursuing a goal, whatever you choose. Story 46. Flip a coin and have it land on heads 30 times in a row. If you can do that, you might be as lucky as Steve Jobs, in which case I'll let you drop out. Story 47. College isn't just for increasing earning potential. Also, Steve Jobs was a moron who died a needless death by treating cancer with strawberries and cantaloupe. Maybe if he stayed in college, he'd be alive right now.